Welcome to Whole Living, the place to get expert advice and fresh ideas about eating well, going green, staying fit, and much more. And now, here's your host.
Come on, get into the Christmas spirit. We're listening, and I'm listening to myself on Whole Living, Martha Stweart Living Radio, Sirius 112, XM 157. I'm Terry Giuspicio, and we are going to talk gifts today. And my question to you is, what gifts do you make by hand for your friends and family? Something that maybe you do one batch a year, you make all this, what? It could be food, but we're looking at like crafty stuff. We want to hear something that you make that you give to people. 866-675-6675. Because you know what? This is a fun time of year to do that. I know you're busy, but some of the fun in preparing a gift is not just shopping, although I love that too, but actually taking a little bit of time to make something. And I know the people listening like to do that. Everyone from the moms to the truckers, we've heard from so many people who love to make gifts by hand. And our guest loves to make stuff by hand too. And her name is Abigail Gehring, and her book is Sufficiency, a complete guide to baking, carpentry, crafts, organic gardening, preserving your harvest, raising animals, and more, all in one book. Abigail's very busy with her research on this one. Abigail, welcome to Whole Living.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Now, we spend a lot of money buying each other bath salts and soaps and candles. Think about how much we spend, how much the markup is when you go to buy them in a fancy store. We're not paying for the soap, I bet.
It's true. You're mostly paying for the packaging.
Right.
You're paying for the pretty little bottle that it comes in. Of course,
the marketing.
Exactly. It's fun, but it is really extra special, and you do save a little bit money
when you make it yourself. Now, of course, you're a pro. Anyone who can, claim to tell people how to do baking and raising animals and carpentry in one book is going to know it. And someone's going to say, well, Abigail's obviously a crafting and homestead expert, but your average person, it might sound like, what? What do you mean make my own candles?
Yeah, well, a lot of these projects in this book are actually a lot simpler than you would expect. Some of them are for more people who are a little bit more advanced, but a lot of them anybody could really do.
Anyone could do. They're simple versions of it, too. And a lot of people don't get the chance to be creative and make something. Like their everyday job is maybe they don't think of it as very creative, and so this is like their chance. Because it is a creative act.
In the holiday season, everybody sort of is home and they're in their, warm house and they want to do something fun for their friends and family.
Or do it together. Yeah. It's sort of fun to make it. I mean, you could do it solo and surprise everyone, or you could make it a night where everyone's going to be doing this and then giving them away.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
I love that idea.
Invite your friends over, have a little party.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Crafting parties. If you've got a question about something you want to make from home, you want to make it home yourself, then this is a great time to call. So we're taking your questions and your suggestions for gifts that you can make yourself. 866-675-6675. Some people might say, well, candles and soap, they're made in a huge factory. And so I would need a huge factory. I don't know how I would do that myself. But once upon a time, we used to make this stuff ourselves. And somehow we kept rooms clean and kept our body clean and had light to read by, and it wasn't because there was a factory.
Of course. Right? I mean, life was different. People were not spending most of their lives in offices and so forth. But yeah, things like making candles or making bath salts really can be pretty simple.
Well, tell us a little bit about your background, like how you're an expert in all these areas, like a little bit about you.
I grew up in Vermont, actually.
There you have to go no further than that. We now know.
No, my family still lives there. My husband still lives in Vermont, so I'm still connected to Vermont, even though I live in the city at this point. So I grew up gardening and raising animals and
part of your
doing
upbringing.
A lot of these crafts, exactly. It's much more part of the everyday lifestyle there than it is.
So if you ran out of soap in the shower, your mom's like, well, I guess it's time for you to I guess it's time for you to make some soap. I don't know what you're looking at me for. Did you ever make your own soap? It's like, how young were you when you were trying to make your own crafts?
Well, simple crafts, we started pretty young. Soap, I guess, was more, I think when I was a teenager, I really got into that sort of thing. And my older sister used to make soaps and sell them at a little store.
Oh, see, that's another thing. Okay, one thing to give for gifts, but what about selling stuff? What if you got into doing this and you loved it so much and you found you had a flair for it, or you just felt so relaxed doing it that you wanted to make it a side job?
Sure. Homemade soaps and other crafts are hot commodities.
And we just said there's a huge markup, so guess who gets the markup? So on one hand, we're like, Red, there's a huge markup. Then we're like, hey, guess what? There's a huge markup.
You can get in on that.
You can get in on that. And places like Etsy and other, craft sites online. I mean, if we haven't been to Etsy.com, you could get lost shopping around there, all handmade stuff. And do people make their own stuff and sell it there, right?
Yeah, of course. That's the
Do you?
idea. I don't sell anything. I'm busy writing books. And
You're busy writing books. You're teaching. You're like, look, I'm giving people, I'm teaching a man to fish here. I'm not just giving them fish.
That's right.
All right. Well, 866-675-6675. What are you making from home this holiday? What are you doing on your own? Or is it tradition for you to make? And or what questions do you have about something that you'd like to try? And Abigail Gehring can answer your question. 866-675-6675. So let's start with, what should we start with? Soap? Should we start with soap?
Sure.
What is soap basically? Because we think it's a mystery stuff that's on an ingredients label that someone printed far, far away.
Right. Well, traditionally it's made of water, lye, and some sort of fat or oil. The oil could be anything from almond oil to olive oil to, animal fats. There's a huge range of oils you can use in making soap. The process of doing it from scratch is a little bit precise and a little bit tricky. It's not something
It's like baking. You don't just come up with your own idea. It has to. It's a chemistry.
It is
thing.
a chemistry, and especially because you're working with lye, you do want to follow a recipe, and you want to wear your safety goggles. You want to be careful.
Lye,
do it right.
It's weird because soap has got to be one of the mildest things we think of. You could touch against your obviously naked skin.
Yeah.
But what's lye that it's so dangerous?
Well, it is a chemical, actually.
It's just a straight up chemical.
Yeah. So it is. Once it's mixed with all of the other ingredients and it's set properly, then it's not a problem anymore, obviously. But during that process, you do need to be careful.
And you can buy it. I mean, the kinds of supplies. Well, let's get into that in a second about the kinds of supplies you want if you're going to try to make soap and give it away. But first, let's go to Linda in Arizona and find out what she's making. Hey, Linda.
Hi there.
What are you doing this holiday? What are you making?
Well, every year I make cheesecakes, individual cheesecakes for all my friends and family.
Oh, wow.
They are fantastic, and I even went out and got the cardboard bases and bakery boxes and then had stickers made up that said, "With love from Linda A."
Oh, I love that.
That's
So
fun.
they're just teeny tiny, like I could eat the whole thing. Well, I'm sure I could eat the whole thing, but is it like it's a single serving sort of mini cake, mini pie?
No, it will give you about 4 servings.
Oh, okay. Wow. How many do you make? How many cheesecakes are you making on average?
Oh, on average, about 30.
Oh, my God.
Wow. How long does that take you?
It takes me about a week.
Wow. And then they're all, you have to give them as you make them, right? Because you want to give them away fresh, or do you freeze them?
Nope, I give them away fresh. I do it, they get them as I make them so that they can have them fresh.
So you can imagine, if you're on Linda's cheesecake list, right about now, you're like, any minute, she's going to come by. And you imagine Linda, freezes out people she doesn't want to be friends with anymore. It's like, they're waiting for the call. They're waiting for the knock on the door. No cheesecake. Have you ever withdrawn a cheesecake from someone, Linda?
I'm sorry?
Have you ever withdrawn a cheese, taken them off your cheesecake list? Has anyone fallen off the list?
Not yet.
It's a good leverage, though. It's like, you want to do this? Can you help me out? Because you want a cheesecake this year, right?
Christmas is coming.
I love it. And what else do you make? Anything else?
Yes. Every time we have a new grandchild, and this year there were 4.
Oh, my God. Congratulations.
Thank you. We're up to 17.
Wow.
Wow, that's a lot of cheesecake.
I make stockings out of felt and sequins and beads and individualize them to the new little person. And then as we've got some on the older end that are getting married, so their spouse gets one, and they're also personalized too. Like our oldest granddaughter just got married, and her husband is a golfer, so I've created a golfer for him.
Oh, that's so sweet. So basically, Linda shutters herself in her home on December 1st and sets about making cheesecakes and stockings, and that is all you're doing right now.
Oh, I wish. I work full time.
Oh, my gosh. You work full time. And where? In Santa's workshop?
Well, kind of like that. I'm a public health nurse for a health department.
Oh, my goodness. You are Superwoman. Linda, if I had an award to give you, I would give it to you because you're just too much. This is fantastic. And because I was going to say, you can't possibly be buying gifts for 17 grandchildren.
Well, what they each get, 17 is gotten to be
That's too much, yeah. Those first 4 had it good for a while. But now, come on. We can't break Grandma's bank. She's breaking her back working all the time.
Yeah, well, I don't buy gifts for them. They all do get gift cards, and they all do get an individual ornament every year. So, yeah, they kind of outnumbered my bank account.
Yeah, I bet. Most people's bank accounts. Well, Linda, thank you so much. This is great. And I love that you make everyone cheesecakes. And if you better be good, you stay on Linda's cheesecake list. Thanks so much for the call, Linda. Have a great holiday. 866-675-6675. Anyone else making crafts, making something? Have you made soap before, or have you tried and maybe we're like, I don't know what I did wrong? Now's the time to ask, because we're going to talk about that. But we'd also love to hear about anything else you make. Candles, bath salts, stuff that you do that is kind on the wallet and also a lovely gift to give or receive. 866-675-6675. Again, we're speaking with Abigail Gehring. Her book is Sufficiency. And let's talk a little bit about the kinds of supplies you should have on hand if you're going to make something like soap.
Sure. Before we overwhelm people with the idea of soap being a really complicated process, I do want to say that there is a much simpler method for people like Linda who have, a million grandkids.
Right.
You can do the melt and pour method, which is basically you buy soap that has already been processed, so the chemical part is done for you. Mm-hmm. And then you can sort of put your special touch on it. You melt it down, you add your essential oils, you can add a little bit of
I've done that.
oatmeal.
Soap kits. There's lots of soap kits. I think we did them on the show, Jen.
My husband and I did that for our wedding. We made little soaps and gave those out as the
That's
as
a great beginner thing because you have the base basically, and then and you can buy those bases like a big chunk of what is the stuff made of? It's like all different types.
Yeah, you can make
glycerin.
You can get glycerin. You can get shea butter soap. You can get cocoa butter. They're all different kinds.
And if you started with that, just say if you were going to I'm do melt and pour, what are the kinds of things you might put in there that aren't weird? Like what's a good thing to put into soap?
Yeah, any kind of essential oil will give it a nice smell.
So get a bottle and put a few drops in there.
Lavender, eucalyptus, anything you like, orange. You can do sort of a citrusy soap. Mm-hmm. You can also put in oatmeal, which is a nice exfoliant. So when you're using your soap.
Like oatmeal, just not
Quaker
the
oats.
steel cut. You mean the rolled oats?
Yeah, rolled oats.
Softer.
A little softer. Well, I guess it depends how much you want to exfoliate, but
yeah, I know. You want to rip your skin off. So you pour it into what's like a double boiler, right?
Exactly.
You put it into a bowl inside a pot. That's what I usually do. Put a big metal bowl, little water in the bottom, so that you're heating that bowl, and then you pour the stuff in, and then do you pour the oatmeal right in or at the end, or do you just put it right in right away?
You put it in towards the end after it's all melted, and probably you want to put your scents in first if you're going to do anything like that.
Put that first, because I didn't know if that would burn off or something.
You want to remove it from the double boiler after the soap is melted, and then you put in the essential oil and then any other ingredient that you want.
And then you pour them into molds, which you can also buy, different shapes.
You can buy molds. You can even make your own molds.
You can?
Want to get into it. Mm-hmm.
With what? Like, what's the ideal kind of material you'd want to pour soap into that you'll be able to get it out of once it hardens?
You can use like a plaster of Paris, or you can use sort of a rubber material works better because then you can just kind of pop it out.
Peel it out,
easily.
right.
Or you can even use something as simple as like a baking tin, cupcake or muffin tins.
And you can you could get sort of, if you wanted to, Christmas-shaped sort of stuff and use that as your... That's kind of cute. I like that idea. Oh, we got a call here from Chris in Atlanta. Chris!
Hey, how are you?
Hey, how are you, Chris? Long time no talk. What are you making? What are you going to wow us with? You always wow us.
Well, actually, I was going to tell you that in the first issue of Martha Stweart Living in 1990, she gave lots of ideas on how to make your own wrapping paper and all that stuff. So that was the first year. For 20 years now, I've been doing...
Chris, you are too much. I love it. And yes, as we need to hire Chris at Martha Stewart. First of all, you're right. Martha Stewart Living 20-year anniversary, and you've been reading it since then.
Yes, I have every issue categorized.
Oh my!
In our bookshelf. So.
What? Every issue. Oh.
I pull the Christmas issues out at Christmas and Thanksgiving at Thanksgiving and Easter at Easter. To go back for old ideas.
Chris, you have them all in one place. You have to take a picture of all of your collection and emails was at wholelivingradio@marthastewart.com. I got to show this to someone because, you know, I got to know what kind of Martha Stewart fans are out there that they would keep every issue. This is amazing. But anyway, so you make, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I do the, like I made some little lunch bags, and I did the bath soap, homemade bath soaps several years ago. I've made the fruit in the brandied containers. This year I had so much lavender in my garden that I did make soap with lavender, and then I used the extra lavender and made simple syrups to give to people.
Oh, nice.
Oh, my gosh, you and Jen Zendro making your simple syrups.
Yeah,
That's lovely.
It's pretty good. It's good with iced tea, so I did some for a bar party this year. But, yeah, I make all kinds of fun things and give them away. And a lot of them come from Martha Stewart's magazines.
Oh, my goodness. Is he too? I swear he's not a plant. He's not a plant. This is really Chris in Atlanta who really does all of this stuff, everything we do, and we love to hear from him. I love it. And you put soaps, you put real lavender. You said lavender.
Yeah, I put lavender.
So they're in it.
Coffee beans to
Coffee
make like an exfoliant soap and some oatmeal.
Oh, my gosh.
Great. And do you make them from scratch, or do you do the melt and pour thing?
Actually, I buy at the lanolin and stuff at the pharmacy, and then get to make lotions. My mother used to make lotion a long time ago, and so she told me how to do that. And then I buy at Michael's. You can buy the soap, the base.
Base.
I add different scented oils and my lavender from the garden, or just whatever I happen to have.
That's great.
I love it. Chris, you're the best. Thanks so much for checking in.
All right. I'll talk to you later.
All right. We'll talk to you very soon, Chris. Thank you. Let's go to Michelle. Oh, God, Chris is just really too much. I love him. Michelle in New Jersey, how are you, and what are you making?
Hi. I have been a soap maker for 13 years.
Wow.
So, yeah. It started out just reading a handmade soap book saying, I can do this. And I did, and turned it into a store.
Oh, my goodness. You made a business out of it.
Yeah, I did. And then sold my store. Now I'm a mom who makes soap and sell it round the clock. So I do give soap as gifts, and because that's what everybody wants. And I do bath salts as well. Give that for holiday gifts. And I have a question for your guest regarding soap making, if I can ask.
Of course. Go ahead.
So my question is, when I do cold process, and when I sometimes, more often than not, have soaps that just don't make the cut,
Sure.
Just didn't come out quite right, or the smell didn't come out well. And so I am interested in rebatching it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you do that, but I've tried to find information online about rebatching, grading it down, and adding a liquid to it.
Right.
Do you know how to do this? Actually, I know it's a double boiler process, and but I don't know the proportions and how to actually do it, because I have a lot, soap just sitting around that I can only use so much.
She wants to recycle and reuse the soap that she wasn't so psyched about it.
After all that work, you don't want it to go to waste.
Right.
But basically what you'll be doing is the melt and pour method that we talked about before. You'll just have made your own base, basically.
Okay.
So you do, like you said, want to melt it down in a double boiler. And you mentioned adding liquid. What kind of liquid have you been adding?
Well, I don't know. I have read to add either water. I think it's mostly water, but when I've tried that, not surprisingly, it just turns into a sudsy mess.
Right.
So it just doesn't come out, because I've done melt and pour. It does not, it does not liquefy like the melt and pour does, so that it's pourable. It's just a mess, and I end up kind of plopping it into the mold and pressing it in there, and it still has chunks, and it's a mess, and it does take a while to harden after that. So,
and what if you don't add liquid and you just melt it down and pour it into your mold? Is that not working either?
You know what? I haven't even, it's going to sound stupid. I have not even tried that. So I suppose that would be my next step.
Yeah, give that a shot.
Yeah, and so I would just re-add some essential oils to that once it's liquefied.
Sure. I mean, if you already have your essential oils in there because you've already made the soap all the way through, then you want to be careful and not add too much more.
Okay.
But it seems like it should just be able to melt and pour it into your molds, and that should work.
Okay.
It's ultimately like recyclable in that way.
Yeah.
Right.
In my experience, soap is pretty flexible as far as that's concerned.
All right. We want to give that a try, Michelle. Thanks so much for the call.
Sure, good luck.
And again, the book we're talking about is Self-Sufficiency, a complete guide to baking, carpentry, preserving your harvest, much more than that. Abigail Gehring is here. And if you've got questions like that about something you've been working on, you're having a hard time with, especially making something like soap or candles or any other home crafts type stuff, now's the time to give us a call, 866-675-6675. Or if you just want to brag and say, guess what I did this year? Like, I made 30 cheesecakes and 55,000 stockings for all my grandkids. Yeah. Or I just looked back at my entire collection of Martha Stewart. We should let Chris know that, all this stuff is online pretty much. He doesn't have to keep every issue, but he sounds like a real collector.
It's so much more fun to have it all lined up in your shop, I'm sure.
Oh, he's very proud of it, I'm sure. Now, she had mentioned, our last caller, cold process. I mean, what is that exactly? Is there a way to define that?
There are various ways of making soap. Some are a little bit more complicated than others. They're all basically a mixture of the same ingredients of lye and oil and water. It's just a different method of going about it.
So normally, if you're going to make soap from scratch, you need those ingredients.
Right.
And then what's the trickiest part? What's the one piece of equipment you need to make that happen, to make all these things come together and create soap?
You need some sort of dish that's some kind of sturdy dish that's going to react well with the chemicals and so forth. You'll need goggles are a good idea because if the lye splashes at all, you get it on your skin. You want to wear gloves as well. Spoon to mix it all together. Some people use an immersion blender, which is basically a blender that you can stick right into a pot that will sort of emulsify the mixture more easily than if you're
Won't that make lye splatter everywhere?
Well, hence the goggles.
Yes. Oh, my goodness. It's a lye bath.
Yeah, you do need to be careful for sure.
So that's soap, but I want to make sure we get to candles because that might be a little less intimidating in a way because if we're not doing a chemistry project, if someone's about to go about making candles, what's the first thing they should do?
The easiest way to make candles is to make a jar candle. So you have a glass jar or even, again, a mold that could be a cupcake tin or anything like that. And you melt down, you can use soy. Soy candles are popular now because of their ecological implications and so forth.
You can buy a big thing of wax. Is that what you do? Or?
Yeah, we used to melt down crayons when we were little. If we had leftover pieces of crayons, it's wax.
You turned crayons into candles?
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. And I used to love the smell of crayons. I don't know. I love how they smell.
It's good.
And what about scraps of other candles? Because when it gets down to the end of your candle and it's not lighting because it's all pulled away from the wick, but you still have wax, what do? Just put that jar with all the remnants of wax and just put it in a double boiler and melt it?
Exactly. You want to melt it. And then if you have a wick, or it's best if you get actual wick from a craft store. But
they have long ones, right, with the metal foot. And you just put that in the...
And if it doesn't have the metal foot, you can tie a little metal washer to the bottom of it if you want to do that yourself.
And does the wick stand up straight without any wax in there?
The best way to handle that is... So you have your washer at the bottom of the jar, and then the string is coming up vertically. Right. If you tie a pencil or a dowel or something like that to the top of it, and you rest that on the top of your jar,
there you go.
It'll hold it upright.
And then you just melt down your wax and pour it into the jar.
Exactly.
Now, my problem is if I take all these other scraps of candles that smell good or look nice, chances are if you mix a bunch of different colors, you're going to get brown, right?
It's true.
You give away brown candles.
You can layer them. If you have a little more time, you can melt down all your brown scraps and do one layer, let that harden, and then melt down all your red scraps.
Oh, I love that. You could do stripes.
Exactly.
A stripe thing. So say you want to do that without scraps. Say you want to buy a red and green blocks of wax, and then you're going to melt them down. If you pour the first, say you're going to do 5 of these, you take out 5 or 10, whatever jars, then you pour an inch or so of the melted down green wax. And then how long do you need to let that dry before you pour in the next thing? Because then you're going to have to go back to the green, but the green will be hard, so you got to make sure you're keeping them both going. How long does that take?
You do want to let it cool for about an hour. If you want to speed that up, you could stick it in your freezer.
Okay. And so... Because if you have 2 kinds of wax, you're trying to keep them all warm, then you're going to be, it's like doing laundry, like you're never done. You're always just one load away.
It's a good long rainy day project.
It's a long rainy day project. Or you don't have to do the stripes or anything fancy. But what about adding, so if you have just plain old soy wax, which is a good way to go, and you want to add scent, you just, again, with the essential oils or?
Essential oils are the best way to go. Yeah.
Okay.
They won't pollute the candle. It'll burn cleanly, and they give a really nice scent.
And so when you melt it down, you just put it, how many drops you put into a big bowl of wax. I mean, just 5? I mean, how do you know that's not going to be too much, or you're going to do it and you're not going to smell anything?
Usually for, if you're making 5 or 6 medium-sized candles, I'd probably use 4 to 6 drops of an essential oil. But you'll smell
for
it.
the whole batch, for all 5?
For the whole batch.
Really? So it's potent stuff.
And you also, different essential oils, depending on the brand, are different strengths. So you kind of have to experiment a little bit.
Do you ever blend the essential oils so that, like, obviously for holiday, maybe you want to do a peppermint one, but, is there a right or wrong way to blend scents? Like, you don't want to mix this one with this one, or do you like to keep it pure?
I mean, I think it's a little common sense. It's a little personal preference. There's nothing wrong with blending essential oils. You just want to use combinations that you think smell good together on a normal basis.
And what about other stuff you can put in there? You see cool candles with stuff in there. I mean, a simplest way would be to melt it down. This is a great way to use up those jars you have around, especially if you're recycling and you have leftover jars. Maybe you have a little jar that used to have who knows what in it, like little artichoke hearts or whatever. That's a perfect little candle size.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that. So go around and scavenge for some glass. The little lid is even nice. You could decorate the lid.
Sure.
But then you put the lid on top, right? And then when you are pouring it in, what might you put in there to make it a little fancy?
Especially this time of year.
Sparkles? Glitter?
You could put, sparkles or glitter.
Could you put glitter? What happens when that burns? I guess nothing. Martha Stewart has some nice glitters. That would be fun, a sparkly candle.
That would be fun, yeah. I don't think there's really any issue with burning that. Within reason, you don't want your whole candle made of glitter.
No, totally. What else would you put in there?
You could put dried orange slices or cinnamon sticks.
But you're not just mixing them into the batch. Like, you want them placed
for
in
that
a way.
sort of thing. Those are better actually for dipped candles, because then when your candle is actually hardening, you can stick them around the outside.
Oh, I see. So that's different. So the jar candle's one thing.
Right.
That's easy. Just pour it in there, let it hard. The other kind is a dipping, which is what I'm thinking of, like when you go visit Williamsburg, Virginia, and you go to visit like the candle maker.
Yep.
So what is the premise of that? Like, you have a long wick and you're just dipping it. Like, how does that work?
Yeah, you have a long wick, so it's hanging down on 2 sides. You're sort of holding it in the middle.
Yep.
And you're melting down your wax in the double boiler. You dip the strings in, and you pull them out and let them air dry just for, maybe 30 seconds or something, and then dip them again.
And it clings and it keeps adding, keeps clinging.
Exactly.
So you don't have to wait an hour in between. You're waiting like literally
No, because it's just a little bit of wax on each layer.
What a meditative act that would be. Just sitting like dipping that in. The zen of candle making. And then you could roll it in glitter, or you could do something like that. And then you have a matching pair. That would be really nice too.
It's also fun if you're doing different colors to layer a dipped candle, because then you can peel away the candle after it dries, and you'll see all of the different layers. If you take a paring knife or something and sort of make shavings off of the edge of the candle, and you'll see all the various different colors.
Wow, you get real artsy. And again, there's very step-by-step instructions in the book, Sufficiency by Abigail Gehring. And lastly, we didn't touch on were bath salts. If you're going to infuse some bath salts, is it just like Epsom salts?
It's usually a mix of sea salt and Epsom salts.
And you could put those in a jar too, but when do you put in your scent and all that?
They're super easy. You just mix your sea salt, your Epsom salt. The ratios are not really that important. And put in a few drops of essential oil. If you want, again, you can add oatmeal or a little bit of baking soda. Also gives it a nice feel. You can put in lavender if you have it, little lavender buds, and just mix it all together.
And that's it. There's no oil. You don't add oil.
Well, essential oils.
I mean, oil, like carrier oil. No, that would be more for a body scrub.
It depends. Actually, I have a few recipes in my book, Self-Sufficiency, and some of them do include some sort of body oil, and some of them are just the plain salts.
Which are so lovely if you have a bathtub this time of year. And then again, you have some fun with it. You have these little jars, or you can go to, if you don't have any jars, go to like the container store or something like that and get little containers for them. And what a nice gift. There's so many great ideas in this book. Again, the book is Self-Sufficiency, a complete guide to baking, carpentry, crafts, and on, everything that you could want. Edited by Abigail Gehring. And this is really, really helpful stuff. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.